Welcome to the HR Tech Nexus podcast, the go-to resource for small and mid-sized businesses ready to revolutionize recruiting and onboarding. Twice a week, we deliver actionable, budget-friendly tech strategies to help you compete for top talent globally without enterprise-level costs. If you're drowning in manual hiring tasks, battling compliance headaches, or stuck with clunky HR systems, you're in the right place. We break down tools like AI-driven applicant trackers, seamless onboarding platforms, and compliance automation, all scaled for SMEs. Join me as we unpack real-world strategies from HR leaders who've slashed time to hire, boosted retention, and built future-ready teams.
Welcome to HR Tech Nexus, Episode 9. We're doing a deep dive on digital learning for employee training and engagement. And guess what? All the great info we're going to be chatting about today comes straight from hrtechnexus.com. You know, they're all about helping companies, especially small to medium-sized ones, put these strategies into action.
It really makes you think, about how much the workplace has changed just in the last couple of years and, how these changes really impact the way we all learn these days.
Yeah, for sure. What comes to mind when you think about that?
Well, the shift to remote work, obviously. I mean, digital learning is basically a must-have now for training and onboarding, especially for those remote or hybrid teams.
Right, and hrtechnexus.com, they really highlight that. But before we go any further, maybe let's define what we actually mean by digital learning. It feels like that term gets tossed around a lot.
Yeah, it does. It's basically any kind of learning that happens online. So think like e-learning modules, those quick mobile learning apps you can use on your phone, virtual classrooms, even things like podcasts or webinars.
Got it. So a pretty wide range of options there. But why should companies, especially the small to medium-sized ones, really care about this stuff? What's the big takeaway for them?
Well, hrtechnexus.com, they point to a study by Brandon Hall Group, and it found a super strong link between digital learning programs and, get this, employee engagement. Companies that have a solid digital learning culture actually see a 10 to 20% jump in engagement. And in today's job market, that's massive.
Yeah, 10 to 20%. Wow, that is huge. It sounds like digital learning is not just a nice thing to have anymore. It's like essential.
Totally agree. And it's not only about keeping employees happy, having high engagement actually leads to more productivity, better customer service, and at the end of the day, a healthier bottom line. hrtechnexus.com has worked with tons of companies that have actually seen a direct impact on their financial performance after they put these really solid digital learning programs into place.
Okay, starting to see the value here. But I'm also thinking about some of those small business owners listening to us right now. They might be thinking, okay, digital learning sounds amazing, but how do I make it work for me? I don't have a ton of cash for fancy tech.
Yeah, that's a really valid concern. But hrtechnexus.com, they really stress that you don't need a giant budget to get started. Even small steps can make a difference. They actually suggest looking at the tools you're already using, like your communication platforms.
So instead of building a whole new system, you can just leverage what you already have. That's smart.
Totally. And don't forget about all those free or really cheap resources out there. There are tons of really great online learning platforms and content libraries that are perfect for starting out.
I think there's this idea that digital learning has to be all tech all the time. But it seems like there's room for more creative, low-tech approaches too.
For sure. hrtechnexus.com actually talks about this case study about a small manufacturing company, and they started a peer-to-peer mentoring program as part of their digital learning strategy. They used a simple online forum for employees to connect and share their knowledge, and it was a huge success for them.
That's awesome. It just goes to show that digital learning isn't just about the software. It's about creating that culture of learning and knowledge sharing, no matter how much money you have or what tech you've got.
Exactly. The tech is just a tool. It's really the strategy and the culture behind it that makes all the difference.
So we've talked about how digital learning can boost engagement and some ways to get started without breaking the bank. But let's get a little more specific. What are some strategies companies can use to make their digital learning programs truly engaging?
One thing that hrtechnexus.com really pushes is gamification.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but what does that look like in real life?
It's about bringing in those fun game elements into the learning experience. So think points, badges, leaderboards, maybe even some friendly competition between teams.
Making it feel less like work and more like a game. I like that. I'm a sucker for leaderboards myself. A little healthy competition gets me going.
It can be really powerful. It taps into that natural desire we all have to achieve something and get recognized. Plus, it makes learning way less scary and more enjoyable. HRTechNexus.com, they actually recommend easing into gamification.
What do you mean by that?
You don't have to jump all in on some complex gamified learning platform right away. Maybe start with something super simple, like a quiz with points at the end of an online module.
So dipping your toes in the water and seeing how people react.
Exactly. Then, as you get more comfy, you can start trying out more advanced gamification stuff. And HRTechNexus.com, they can help you figure out how to tailor those approaches to your specific needs and budget.
I like how they break it down into smaller steps. It makes digital learning seem less overwhelming, especially for those smaller companies that might not have a whole learning and development team.
That's totally their goal, to make this stuff easy to understand and do for everyone.
Awesome. So what other things can companies do to make these digital learning experiences really engaging?
HRTechNexus.com, they're big on incorporating multimedia. So instead of relying on those text-heavy modules, think about using videos, interactive simulations, podcasts, even things like virtual reality.
Oh yeah, VR is interesting. It seems like that's getting more accessible these days.
It is, and it's super powerful for some types of training. HRTechNexus.com, they highlight this case study about Walmart. They used VR to train employees on new store layouts and procedures.
Cool. What were the results?
They found that employees finished the training way faster, and not only that, they actually remembered the information better, too. It's a great example of how investing in that immersive tech can really pay off.
It makes sense. The more of your senses you use, the more likely you are to remember what you learned, right?
Yeah.
Like that saying, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand.
Exactly. And digital learning lets you involve people in ways that traditional training just can't.
So we've got gamification, multimedia. What else should we keep in mind?
One thing HRTechNexus.com really stresses is personalization. Recognizing that we don't all learn the same way. Some people are visual learners, some are auditory, some need to actually do things.
Right. We all have our own learning styles. But how do you personalize learning in a digital environment? Isn't it just one-size-fits-all content?
Not at all. There are some digital learning platforms that can tailor content to each employee's needs and how they learn best.
Okay, so how does that work? Some AI magic or something?
AI is playing a part, for sure. HRTechNexus.com talks about these platforms that use AI to analyze how your employees are learning and then change the difficulty or the actual content in real time. But even without AI, there are things you can do.
Like what?
Well, offering different ways to learn the same stuff. So instead of just a text-based module, maybe you also have a video version or a podcast episode that covers the same ideas.
So employees can pick the format that works for them. I like that. It gives them more control over how they learn.
Right. And it makes the learning process more engaging because people are actually choosing how they want to learn.
This is all sounding incredibly cool. But is there a way to actually measure how well this stuff is working? I mean, how do you even know if your digital learning programs are doing what you want them to?
That's where data comes in. Digital learning platforms, they can track all kinds of things like course completion rates, how people do on quizzes, even how long they spend on certain topics.
So you can actually see what's clicking with your employees and what's not.
Exactly. And you can use that data to tweak your training programs as you go along. Maybe you notice one module is always getting low engagement. That's a sign to revamp it. Maybe try a different approach.
This is making me think about feedback, too. It seems like it's not just about data from the platform, but actually hearing from employees about what they thought about their learning experience.
Definitely. HRTechNexus.com, they talk about how important it is to create that feedback loop. Talk to your employees. Get their honest opinions about the programs. Are they finding the content interesting? Are they seeing the value in it? What could be better? That feedback is gold.
It sounds like digital learning is this ongoing process of trying things out and making things better. You're constantly gathering info, getting feedback, and making changes to improve the learning experience.
You got it. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's about always getting better, just like any other part of your business.
Okay, this has been super helpful. But I bet some small business owners out there might be feeling a bit lost. Where do you even begin to make this work for your company?
It all starts with taking a hard look at your training programs now. What are your needs right now? What are your goals? Once you really understand where you are, you can start thinking about where you want to go.
And HRTechNexus.com can help with that, right?
Absolutely. They specialize in helping businesses of all sizes make this change. They can help you figure out your needs, find the right platforms, and come up with a strategy that fits your budget and your goals.
And they even give personalized advice, which is awesome, especially for smaller companies that might not have those dedicated learning and development resources. It's like having a digital learning consultant in your back pocket.
Exactly. And the great thing is that digital learning doesn't have to be this all or nothing thing. You can start small.
Where would you recommend starting?
Maybe you could try a mobile learning app for quick training bursts when people have some downtime. Or maybe you could add some gamification to your existing training programs. HRTechNexus.com, they've got tons of resources and case studies to help you find the right place to start for your company.
Okay, so start small and build from there. I like that. It makes digital learning seem way less intimidating.
That's the key. It's about taking those first steps and building momentum over time.
I'm also curious about what's coming next for digital learning. What are the big trends companies should be watching out for?
Get ready for some exciting stuff. We're talking VR, AI, and even blockchain getting involved.
Blockchain for learning. How does that even work?
Think digital credentials. Like, imagine you get a certificate for completing a training program, and that certificate is verified on a blockchain. It's super secure, can't be messed with.
Wow, that's taking things to a whole new level.
Yeah.
So the future is all about making digital learning even more immersive and personalized.
You got it. We're talking about learning experiences that are made just for each person, almost like a choose-your-own-adventure for professional development.
But all that fancy tech won't matter if people aren't actually jazzed about learning, really.
You nailed it. Building a learning culture is absolutely essential, and HRTechNexus.com, they're super passionate about that.
How do you do that? How do you create a culture where learning is actually valued and celebrated?
It starts with a change in mindset. It's about encouraging your employees to see learning as part of their growth, not just another chore on their list.
So it's not about checking boxes and doing those mandatory training modules. It's about actually loving to learn.
Precisely. And there are things you can do to make that happen. HRTechNexus.com suggests recognizing and rewarding people for what they learn. Encourage that growth mindset where challenges are seen as opportunities to learn and get better.
Okay, so make learning visible and celebrate those who are actively participating. I like that. It really sends the message that learning is important to the company.
Right. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just a simple shout out in a team meeting or a handwritten thank you note can go a long way. HRTechNexus.com has a ton of creative ideas for recognizing and rewarding people for learning.
This is making me think about leadership. It seems like if you really want to build a learning culture, it has to start at the top.
100%. Leaders need to set the example. If they're actively learning, sharing what they're reading or listening to, it has a ripple effect throughout the whole company.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
You got it. And don't underestimate peer-to-peer learning. Create chances for employees to share what they know and learn from each other. This could be through mentoring, lunch and learns, or even just casual conversations.
Love that. It's about using all the knowledge and experience your employees have.
Exactly. And when people feel like they're contributing to the learning process, it creates a real sense of community and shared purpose.
Okay, we've covered a lot here, but I want to make sure we touch on one more thing before we move on.
What's that?
HRTechNexus.com talks about making sure your digital learning strategy fits with your overall business goals. Can you expand on that a little?
Sure. It's about making sure your learning programs actually support what your business is trying to achieve. Like if your company is trying to break into a new market, your learning programs should help employees learn the skills and knowledge they need to succeed in that market.
So it's not just learning for the sake of learning. It's about connecting learning to real business outcomes.
Exactly. And that's where HRTechNexus.com's expertise really shines. They can help you figure out where the skills gaps are in your company and create learning programs that address those gaps and get real results.
Sounds like they take a big picture approach to digital learning. It's not just about the tech or the content. It's about making sure everything is aligned with your company's vision and goals.
That's what makes them so effective. They get that digital learning isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what works for your specific business needs.
This has been so insightful. I'm already feeling inspired to rethink how we approach learning at my company.
That's awesome. And remember, you don't have to do it all alone. HRTechNexus.com is there to support you every step of the way. It's really interesting, how the whole definition of learning is changing. It's not just stuck in a classroom or a textbook anymore.
Totally. It's like it's becoming part of everything we do, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're always picking up new stuff, new skills, even when we're not really trying. We learn from online articles, videos, social media, podcasts like this one, even from each other.
It's true. And I think companies are starting to realize how important that informal learning is, too.
HRTechNexus.com has seen that a lot. Companies are shifting away from just structured courses and certifications. They're trying to create spaces where that informal learning can happen more naturally.
So what does that actually look like in a real company, I mean?
It's about building that environment where people feel good about asking questions, sharing what they know, trying out new things. It's about making space for those water cooler moments where learning just happens organically.
Those can be so important, those little moments. I've learned some of the most useful things in my career just by talking to people at work, bouncing ideas around. But I also think there's still a place for more structured learning, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to learn a specific skill or something.
Definitely. It's about finding the right balance. How much formal learning, how much informal. And that's something HRTechNexus.com helps companies figure out. They take a personalized approach, working with each company to figure out what they need, what their goals are.
That personalized approach makes so much sense. What works for one company might be a total flop for another. It depends on what industry they're in, the company culture, how big the team is, so many things.
Yeah, you're right. That's why HRTechNexus.com doesn't just give out the same generic advice to everyone. They really try to understand each company's situation. They've got this team of experts who've worked in a bunch of different industries, so they bring a ton of experience to the table.
It's like they're a partner, not just a consultant. Someone who's in it with you for the long haul.
Totally. And they stay up to date on all the newest trends and technology so they can help companies make good decisions about their digital learning strategies.
Speaking of trends, we talked about a few earlier, like VR, AI, and blockchain. Are there any other new technologies that you think are going to be a big deal for digital learning?
Well, HRTechNexus.com is seeing a lot of buzz around augmented reality, AR. Like Pokemon Go, but for learning.
Okay, that's a fun image. So how would that work exactly?
Imagine you're trying to learn how some complicated machine works. With AR, you could see digital pictures and information right on top of the actual machine.
Wow, that would be super immersive.
Yeah.
It would make learning so much more engaging and hands-on.
Exactly. And it's not just for technical skills either. You could use AR for anything, from sales training to leadership development. HRTechNexus.com has even seen companies using AR to give virtual office tours to new hires.
Oh, that's cool. So you can get a feel for the company culture before you even set foot in the building.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's just one example of how technology is blurring the lines between the physical world and the digital world. And I think that's only going to keep happening more and more.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities. But I want to come back to something we talked about before, building a learning culture. Because even with all this cool technology, it won't do much if people aren't motivated to learn.
You're absolutely right. HRTechNexus.com, they really hit on this point. Technology is just a tool. The culture is what really makes learning and development happen.
So how do you actually build that culture? What can companies do?
HRTechNexus.com says you got to start by getting everyone on the same page. Make it clear why learning matters and how it connects to the big goals of the company.
It's not just about saying, hey, we've got this new learning platform, use it. You need to explain why it's important.
Right, exactly. People need to know how learning helps them personally and how it helps the whole team and the company succeed.
So once everyone understands why learning matters, what's next?
HRTechNexus.com says you should give people opportunities to share what they know and learn from each other. Could be through mentoring programs, those brown bag lunch sessions, or even just encouraging people to share interesting articles and stuff they find.
So it's about making learning a team effort, not just something you do by yourself.
Exactly. And you also want to make learning part of how the company works every day, not just something extra. HRTechNexus.com tells companies to try weaving learning into regular work tasks.
So instead of just having separate time for training, you're always looking for ways to learn while you work.
Exactly. It could be something simple, like encouraging people to talk about what they learned after finishing a project, or it could be more structured, like making a system for writing down and sharing knowledge.
I love that. It's making learning an ongoing thing, not just a one-time event.
Right. It's realizing that everyone in the company has something to teach and something to learn.
It's like getting rid of those old ideas about who's the teacher and who's the student.
Exactly. And HRTechNexus.com is really into that. They believe that everyone should be able to reach their full potential and that learning is how we do that.
It's important to remember that building a learning culture takes time and effort, though. It doesn't just happen overnight.
You're right. It's an ongoing thing, and HRTechNexus.com is there to help companies along the way.
And they've got the experience to back it up. They've worked with all kinds of companies, from tiny startups to huge Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
They really get the challenges and the opportunities that come with building a learning culture.
And they know a ton about the technology side of things, too. They can help companies figure out all those learning platforms and tools and pick the right ones for their needs.
It's like having someone you trust to help you make sense of it all. Because the world of HR tech can be pretty overwhelming, right? So many options, it's hard to even know where to start.
That's exactly why HRTechNexus.com is so helpful. They cut through all the noise and help companies focus on what really matters.
And what does really matter?
Creating a learning experience that's engaging, effective, and fits with the company's goals. It's about giving employees the power to learn, grow, and reach their full potential. And in the end, it's about making work a better, more fulfilling place for everyone.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. But before we wrap things up, I want to remind everyone that we've just scratched the surface of what HRTechNexus.com offers. They've got a ton of resources on their website, like case studies, blog posts, and even a free consultation.
Yeah, definitely check them out. And don't be shy about reaching out to them. They're really friendly and they're always happy to help.
Awesome. We'll share all their contact info in the show notes, but stick around. In the next part, we're going to be talking about how digital learning impacts not just individual employees, but companies as a whole.
Stay tuned.
So we've talked about what digital learning is, how to make it engaging, and how to build that learning culture. But now I want to get to the big question, so what? What's the real impact of all this on companies? I'm betting HRTechNexus.com has some insights on that.
Oh, they definitely do. They've seen how digital learning can totally change businesses. I mean, we're talking boosting productivity, profitability, attracting and keeping top talent, even leading to more innovation and agility.
Wow, that's quite a list. Let's break that down a bit. Let's start with productivity. How does digital learning actually help companies get more done?
It's pretty simple, really. When employees have the knowledge and skills they need to do their jobs well, they're going to be more productive. And digital learning can help fill those knowledge gaps really quickly and efficiently.
And I imagine that also leads to saving money, right? If everyone's working more efficiently, you're saving time and resources.
Exactly. HRTechNexus.com has worked with companies that have seen a big drop in their onboarding and training costs just by switching to digital learning. They've also seen companies reduce those costly errors and having to redo work because employees have the most up-to-date knowledge and skills.
Okay, so productivity and cost savings, that makes sense. But how about profitability? How does that fit into the picture?
Well, when productivity goes up, a lot of times that means profits go up too. But HRTechNexus.com also points out that digital learning can help with profits in other ways.
Like what?
For example, by helping companies create totally new products and services. You see, when employees have access to the latest knowledge and skills, they're more likely to come up with innovative ideas, things that can really boost revenue. Plus, they can learn how to use all those new tools and technologies, the ones that can give a company an edge over the competition.
I see. So it's not just about doing things better. It's about doing new things, being ahead of the game.
Exactly. It's all about building that culture of always learning and always innovating. And that's a big thing for HRTechNexus.com. It's not just about setting up those digital learning programs. It's about building a workforce that's ready for anything.
Okay, we've covered productivity, profitability, innovation. Now, what about attracting and keeping those awesome employees? We touched on this before, but I'd love to hear more about the role digital learning plays in that.
HRTechNexus.com has noticed a big shift in the job market, especially for younger generations. Having opportunities to learn and grow, that's super important. They want to work for companies that invest in their development.
So it's becoming a big part of what makes a company attractive to work for.
Absolutely. It's right up there with salary, benefits, and flexible work options. Companies that have those strong digital learning programs, they have a leg up when it comes to attracting and keeping those great employees.
And it's not just about bringing in new people, right? Digital learning can also help keep your current employees engaged and excited about their work.
That's a huge part of it. When people feel like they're learning new things, growing in their role, they're going to be happier in their jobs. They're less likely to start looking for something else.
It's about showing them that you care about their future.
Exactly. And that can make a big difference in morale, employee retention, and the overall company culture.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've really dug into the power of digital learning and how it affects businesses. But before we wrap up, I've got one last question for you.
Shoot.
If you had to give our listeners just one piece of advice about digital learning, what would it be?
I think the best advice is to just get started. Don't overthink it. Don't wait until you have the perfect platform or the perfect content. Just start small, try things out, see what works for your company and your people. And remember, hrtechnexus.com, they're there to help you every step of the way.
Great advice. It's all about taking that first step and starting that journey. Well, this brings us to the end of our deep dive into digital learning. Thanks so much for being here today and sharing your insights. It's been awesome chatting with you.
It was my pleasure.
And everyone listening, we'll be sharing all of hrtechnexus.com's contact info in the show notes. Make sure to check them out if you're ready to take your company's digital learning to the next level. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing the limits of what's possible.
Thanks for joining us on the HR Tech Nexus podcast. Ready to take action? Head to hrtechnexus.com to access today's episode resources, including actionable guides, real-world case studies, and free tools to streamline your hiring and onboarding. Don't miss our weekly newsletter for bite-sized HR tech hacks, software comparisons, and compliance tips tailored to SMEs. No enterprise-level budgets required. And if you're ready to transform your HR workflows with custom-built solutions, book a free discovery call with our experts. We design strategies that fit your company's size, industry, and global needs. Until next time, innovate boldly, outsmart the status quo, and let's build HR teams that don't just compete, they dominate.